Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to rise and speak in this matter of public importance debate about the need to apologise to all Victorians. And I have to say I am incredibly disappointed to hear Senator Walsh's contribution, which I can only say is highly irresponsible. To misrepresent in particular the advice of the Federal Health Minister in relation to the vaccination is a disgrace. And that's what Senator Walsh has just done. And we all have a responsibility in this chamber, no matter which side of politics we are on, to make sure that Australians have accurate information. And for Senator Walsh to get up with that ridiculous spray and say what she did, she should be totally ashamed. And this is an MPI about the requirements of an apology, and yes, an apology is required, and Victorians have worked it out. An apology is required by the Victorian state government and by federal Labor Victorian MPs and senators who have stood in silence through 4 lockdowns as Victorian residents, including Victorian families, businesses, seniors and students, have been brought to the knees as a result of the mismanagement of the pandemic in Victoria by the state Labor government. The fact that Victoria has suffered 4 debilitating lockdowns, unlike what we have seen in any other state or territory, is no coincidence. So to Labor senators in this chamber, I say, please perhaps consider apologising to Victorians for the hotel quarantine fiasco, including the engagement of security guards who had no proper infection control training or expertise, which allowed coronavirus to spread into the community and, of course, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of senior Victorians, and that was the finding of the Coate inquiry. Apologise perhaps to Victorians for not accepting the offer of help from the Commonwealth, such as the provision of ADF personnel to support the state's quarantine responsibilities. Apologise to Melburnians for the curfew, which effectively locked them in their homes and which was without doubt in breach of the Victorian Government's Charter of Human Rights. Apologise to the people who lived in the public housing towers in Melbourne who were locked down with no warning whatsoever, leaving parents without food for their children and older residents frightened, which the Victorian Ombudsman found was a clear breach of human rights. Apologise for the Victorian State Government's incompetent contact tracing system, and there have been some big improvements, and I am pleased to say that, but it's still a far cry from the gold standard in New South Wales, and it meant that for many months the government ignored the advice of the experts to adopt a unified QR code and check-in system, to adopt proper IT systems and to publish exposure sites so that people could immediately, if they'd visited those sites, isolate and get tested. And perhaps also consider apologising to school students for missing so many weeks of school, to families for not being able to see their loved ones, and even now families in regional Victoria can't visit their loved ones in residential aged care unless they are at end of life. So I say apologise to Victorians for 4 statewide lockdowns, including the most recent lockdown in regional Victoria, where there has been no community transmission, which has resulted in insurmountable financial and mental health pain, and which left so many businesses broken or closed when there was no basis to do so, including the IGA supermarket in Anglesey, which was forced to close as a result of a false positive case and which has now suffered losses in excess of $100,000. Perhaps also apologise to our regional tourism and hospitality sector and to regional chambers of commerce and regional committees, including the Committee for the Mornington Peninsula, which are pleading for the state government to put in place a proper COVID-safe response plan so that whenever a positive case arises, it can be dealt with locally whilst allowing the rest of the city and the state to function as happens in New South Wales. The facts are that this latest lockdown has caused such a loss of faith and confidence because it demonstrates that the Victorian government does still not have the capacity to control the virus and the outbreaks locally in any sort of proportionate manner as occurs in other states. So last weekend, the long weekend, the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry estimated that lost visitation and cancelled trips cost regional Victorian businesses and the visitor economy around $150 million just over 3 days. And that, of course, was due to unreasonable density caps. Some major tourism businesses, such as Sovereign Hill, could not open. Many major businesses were closed, such as Heathcote on Show, the Castlemaine Jazz Festival, wineries, restaurants, hotels, cafes and accommodation providers and other tourist operators were left high and dry. So, Acting Madam Deputy President, it is time that the state government worked out how to keep our state's economy open whilst protecting lives and livelihoods. None of these issues, of course, were addressed by Senator Walsh in her contribution. So I want to now move to the facts in relation to the Commonwealth's quarantine responsibilities, and they are very clear. Again, these are facts not acknowledged or even referenced in Senator Walsh's contribution. Mandatory quarantine with COVID-19 testing is currently considered the best strategy for incoming travellers, and it is a key pillar of our nation's response. Hotel quarantine was mandated by National Cabinet on the 27th of March 2020, and these requirements have been implemented under state and territory legislation with the support of the ADF and Australian Border Force where necessary. Since the implementation of hotel quarantine, there have been 372,000 international air arrivals, with some 4,000 COVID-positive cases, most of which have been in hotel quarantine. And apart from the major failures which occurred in Victoria, there has been very little other outbreaks. So, in accordance with the resolution of National Cabinet, the Commonwealth is supporting the states and territories. It's supporting, obviously, Northern Territory at the Howard Springs quarantine facility. The investment is in excess of $500 million, and that's also supporting our national effort to repatriate Australians flying in to Australia, and that is a major incoming port, of course, for all Australians. There's the agreement with Tasmania to support Australians returning there. And then, of course, there's the Memorandum of Understanding for a quarantine facility in Victoria, and I welcome that. And it is a pity, though, again, Senator Walsh did not reference this, that the state Labor government has proposed an animal quarantine facility at Mickleham as its preferred option. And from where I sit, as a regional senator based in Geelong, that is absurd, because that presents a whole range of biosecurity and logistical issues which the state government have not even considered. And that's why I've been such a big supporter of placing this quarantine facility at Avalon Airport, where incoming travellers can fly directly into Avalon to an international terminal, a first-class terminal, and then travel a very, very short distance to their accommodation facility. So even on this issue, it does seem that the Victorian government has not done its basic homework. I do welcome the fact that the Victorian government is open to Avalon, and I'm very confident, and I hope that that will be the decision as negotiations continue between the Commonwealth and the state. But this makes great sense for Victoria. It makes great sense for the Geelong region. It would be a huge boost for jobs in our local economy, and of course would utilise Avalon Airport, which has endured such financial pain over the last 18 months or so. So I say to Labor senators, there's a lot to apologise for in relation to what has happened in Victoria. It has been a very torrid time, and as I say, it's no coincidence that there have been these rolling lockdowns in Victoria, unlike any other state. I'm really proud of the Morrison government's management of this pandemic, and to a large degree the Morrison government has worked very successfully with the states and territories. Just think of this. More than 12 months ago, it was hard to envisage that we would have a vaccination. That vaccination rollout is happening at a very, very fast pace. We are at total vaccinations of almost 6 million vaccinations. And that is a great achievement. Yes, there is more hard work to be done. We urge all Australians to get vaccinated, but we can be very proud of our efforts together. But I say to the state government in Victoria, please get your act together in relation to the issues for which you are responsible, and I hope and trust that the new quarantine facility in Victoria will be at the wonderful Avalon Airport. Thank you so much.